Hi, everyone. Welcome to She. I am your host, Miss Carrie, baby, and I do have my special guest here. Her name is Heather Ryder. Yes, thank you, and shouts out to all the life coaches out there. She's another one. She's great. She's here to promote herself and tell her great story. And we will be talking about anxiety tonight. Just a little things about anxiety and how to cope with those, and how family members, handle things that's going on with anxiety, and how we function throughout the world, and knowing when you have it and how it affects your life. But it's really the great outcomes as well. And so introduce yourself, Miss Heather. Shouts out to Austin, Texas in the house.
Hi, Gary. Yes, I'm Heather Ryder, and I am in Austin. So we are near each other somewhat, speaking. And yes, as you mentioned, I'm an anxiety coach. I'm also an imposter syndrome educator, and I work with really goal-oriented, high-achieving people who have been held back by their anxiety for a really long time, and they're just ready to feel good about themselves.
Yes, ma'am. Great. And thank you for supporting me. And we can't wait to hear your story, Heather. And it's always been a pleasure speaking with you as well.
Well, thank you.
Yes, so you guys know how I do. We're still celebrating Women's Month. We've been going strong all month. And so it's been amazing. And Miss Heather is here. Like I said, she's my last guest for this month. And then we'll move on to season 3. But I will be taking a break. But we'll talk a little bit more about that later. Once we end the show tonight. So it's been a pleasure supporting you guys. And we are women. We are powerful. We are empowered, and we love to support and help one another. And I thank you guys for tuning in and watching as well. So happy Women's Month to us. So a little fun facts about Women's Month. Today will be the 19th Amendment. If you didn't know, the 19th Amendment in August 26th of 1920 was signed for women to vote. So, well, they didn't give us the right to vote. It was signed for us not to have the right to vote. So we weren't able to vote until 1924. So women have come a long way, and it hasn't even been 100 years since we were able to vote. So yes, guys, that's your fun fact for today. So you guys get out there. Does women vote, men vote? You get your children to vote, because it always has been a pleasure for, a privilege for us to be able to vote and to come together in that united front. So happy Women's History Month to us, guys. And that concludes us for this month. But it has been great. And I have talked to some amazing guests and amazing women this month. So thank you, guys. And so a little bit about, like I said, me and Miss Heather are going to talk to you guys about anxiety tonight. And she's also going to share her story and how she deals with anxiety. But a little bit about anxiety. Anxiety is a mental health disorder that's characterized by feelings of worry, of fear, that you're strong enough to interfere with one's daily activities. So people that have anxiety, sometimes they have panic attacks. They have OCD, which is obsessive compulsive disorder, or they have post-traumatic stress disorder. So anxiety is seen in fairly many different ways and many different things. 5 symptoms for anxiety is when you're being in small spaces, or you feel like you're awkward in social situations. You can start to sweat, you can start to tremble, you feel nervous, or you can even experience nausea, or just not feeling like you want to be around people, or in this, or have people in your space during that time. So anxiety has a lot of different things, and it looks pretty different from, for every other person that has it, or the things that they have experienced as well. So Miss Heather, what is your experience with anxiety?
Yeah, thanks for asking. My experience having had anxiety was kind of different than some of the things you just said, because I had high functioning anxiety, which is sort of just like it sounds like, with high functioning. So that means I was very functioning in the world. My anxiety wasn't debilitating. I wasn't having panic attacks. People with high functioning anxiety are very goal oriented and very driven. And so the anxiety is sort of ironic, because it will actually make people be more successful, not less successful. So the
Mm.
anxiety is like a hamster wheel that's running in someone's head, and it's making them do more and achieve more. And so that's what it was for me when I had high functioning anxiety. It was like this constant overwhelm of thoughts all of the time, where I was either thinking about the past and what I should have done better or done, a better job on, or I was thinking about the future and worried about what might possibly happen. So I would have made like all sorts of contingency plans. It was
Wow.
like a mental chess game that I was constantly
That
playing, trying
makes
to
me
figure out what was coming in the future.
mm,
Yeah, so
wow.
those are some things that I was suffering with when I had high functioning anxiety.
Wow. So when dealing with high functioning anxiety, what are some things that well you hit on a few things that you struggle with. So what are some things that you were doing in your daily activities that made you, feel a certain way, or that you were like something is going wrong, or how did you feel?
So I felt very overwhelmed by everything because I was expending just so much mental energy all of the time. If I was at home, I was thinking about work and what I had to do. If I was at work, I was thinking about what I needed to do at home with my kids. And I would constantly run through like checklists or to do lists in my head. It wouldn't have
Wow.
mattered if I had something written down or if I had it in my calendar, I still would be making sure I wasn't forgetting something. So I'd be running through
Mm,
everything that I had to do. This caused massive insomnia, by the way. I would fall asleep really easily, but I would usually wake up in the middle of the night and not be able to go back to sleep for hours because, we all have those sleep cycles, right? Where we're like in deeper or lighter sleep and you come up the second I would get anywhere close to being awake, my brain would be like, what day is it? What do I have to do? And I would just start
wow.
running through the checklist and then I couldn't shut my brain off.
Mm-hmm.
um, and then this is true for me, and this is very true for people with high functioning anxiety. There is this tendency to overwork and overcheck your
Mm,
work and not be able to say no to things because you're really goal oriented. And so you think, oh, well, any opportunity that comes to me, I need to say yes. And then whenever it is, whatever it is that you're doing, it's like check it, double check it, triple check it, quadruple check it to make sure
yeah.
that it's right. And that could even mean like a simple email that you're sending out at work, not like some long email, like one that
Mm,
has 3 or 4 sentences, right? Like check it over and over and over to make sure that it's just perfect before you send it out. So it basically becomes like this hyper vigilance with making sure that everything is like quote unquote perfect all the time.
wow. Yeah, I feel like I have high functioning anxiety. No, no, because I do. I have a lot of checklists and different things, and I know a lot of people are listening now. Like, wow, that's something to think about. Like, you never really think everything through to say, "Am I too focused?" It's kind of one of those things. Like, am I overthinking things? What things need to be done? Even second guessing yourself. Did I do this? Did I do, And so, like I said, I kind of understand that. And I know a lot of people probably thinking like, wow, could I get tested for this? Or can I see if something's wrong? Because these are some of the symptoms and things that I'm seeing in my daily life as well. So, wow,
Yeah, a
like
lot
that's
of times when
really a
I'm
big
talking with
eye
people, yeah, when I'm talking with people, a lot of the time when I describe high functioning anxiety, people are like, oh my gosh, that sounds like me. I
opener.
didn't know that I had high functioning anxiety when I had it. I had absolutely no idea. I didn't think I had anxiety at all because, like you were talking about anxiety at the beginning,
Mm-hmm.
the things that people sort of associate with anxiety is not, it does not look like high functioning anxiety at all. Like I said, I wasn't having panic attacks. It wasn't keeping me from interacting with people, all those sorts of things. So most
Mm-hmm.
people think that anxiety like looks a specific way, but it could actually look lots of different ways.
Yeah.
And yeah, and so high functioning anxiety is very like hidden from people.
Wow. So, what are some things that you've learned, or how do you cope with your anxiety now with high functioning
Yeah, it's
anxiety?
such a great question. I actually don't have anxiety anymore.
Okay.
So I don't cope with it. And there are skills, of course, that I work with my clients to sort of manage their daily anxiety while we're working on like the core reasons they have anxiety. So this is what I like to explain to people. There are tips and techniques that anybody can use to help lessen the intensity of anxiety. But if you want to actually fix the root cause, the reason you have anxiety, that is a whole like separate thing of like work, body of work that needs to be done. And that's what I did. And that's why I don't have anxiety anymore. So a lot of people are just sort of looking like for a Band-Aid approach. They just want something to get them through the day, but then you're just going to wind up with anxiety for the rest of your life. And it is actually entirely possible to no longer have anxiety. But to do that, you have to work on the core root cause, the reasons that you have anxiety. And that's usually a process that you have to undertake with a professional, typically.
So, when did you discover, around the time, when did you discover that you had high functioning anxiety? What were some things that was going on besides the checklist and the to-do list? Did your family notice anything different?
So, I mean, it's a long story. So to sort of summarize, I didn't know that I had anxiety until I didn't have it anymore. Because like I said, high functioning anxiety is very hidden. So I definitely had a lot of issues, particularly with my daughters. I was not a very good mom. And so our relationship a lot of the time would involve me screaming at them because I would get home from work and I was so frazzled, right, from everything I've already told you I was doing that I had zero patience left when I would get home. And the littlest things would just make me like flip my top. Wow. And so, but my kids were in elementary school, so they wouldn't have associated that with high functioning anxiety. And like I said, most adults wouldn't necessarily have either. But what happened was when you're in a stress response, an anxiety response for a very long amount of time, one has stress hormones, cortisol and adrenaline. And your cortisol level stays up when you're in a stress response. And when you have anxiety for years, my cortisol level was up for years. And so I basically wound up getting very sick from a severe autoimmune reaction. So my body was just like, forget you. Like, you know, my nervous system was shot. So I wound up getting very sick. And that was actually my path into healing, because when I started focusing on healing my physical body, that's actually when I got the emotional healing that I didn't even know that I needed.
Wow, great. So let's just go down the list. Well, how was the healing process? So you're saying that these are things that you were going through and some of your experiences. So how have you healed with that and say, I no longer have it?
Yeah, there was a lot of things that I did along the way. So when I started working on my physical body, I started doing a lot of things that were very different. And so this is called pattern breaking. And so basically I started, when you do something different, it is a big, you know, cue to your subconscious mind that you're ready to change and you're willing to change. So, I mean, the first things I started with was I was changing my diet. I was taking a lot of supplements, and I started to do some things that were different, very different for me. Like I started writing in a journal, just really simple affirmations. I would read something sort of inspiring to me or hear something somewhere, and I would just write it in this journal. And then, you know, the universe, whether you call it universe or God or source, you know, has a way of working when you're ready for something. So people just started telling me about different books that I should read. So I would go and read this spiritual book, you know, and that really started to resonate with me. And so I just started peeling back the layers in some of those ways by just literally doing things I had never done before. That alone was enough to make me, like get into a different state. And then I started doing a number of sort of alternative modalities, like I went to see a Reiki practitioner. Reiki is an energy healing modality. I had some sessions with somebody that really, really were transformative for me, so much so that I decided to become a Reiki master.
Okay.
So yeah, so I was doing energy work, I was doing the affirmations, I was doing the journaling. I just started to also be around other people who were a little bit more like-minded with me, and some people
Mhm.
who weren't really a good fit for me anymore. They sort of faded out of my life. So it was around some people who were much more uplifting. I think that was a good thing for me as well.
Wow. That's great. And that's what I always promote. Find people, that support you, or like you said, the like-mindedness, and know that you're not alone. That's a lot of things what like we like to support here on Talk is Cheap, is knowing like to surround yourself with that supportive group or people that's going through things that you may be witnessing and going through, because we all handle them different, and like you said, it all looks different. So that's actually great. And like we say to you, you pray to God, or like she said, the universe, whatever you believe in, just believe in that and know that it does strengthens you, and it'll be a better outcome as well. So that's great, Miss Heather. And we're glad you're no longer dealing with the high anxiety, but you're also helping people with their anxiety and their struggles as well. So tell us a little bit about your coaching, and why did you start coaching?
Yeah, so I used to work in technology here in Austin. I know you're in Dallas, so you
Yes.
know Austin's a big tech town. I think a lot of people may know that. So I just got to the point where, I was undergoing this change on my own, and I was sort of living like a double life. I was still working, and then I was healing on my own, and, on the weekends doing these things that people sort of knew nothing about. And then I just really started to become different. And it was interesting because, like, at work, I would be the one who would be giving like alternative ways of thinking and sort of
Mhm.
inspirational ideas to a lot of people. And so I was already kind of coaching them
Okay.
in some ways. And then I just got to this point where I was feeling really unfulfilled in my job, and just knowing that, well, at first I didn't know. I was like, I don't understand. Why am I not happy in this job? Like, this is the most money I've ever made, like fill in the
Wow.
blanks with all these things that should have theoretically made me happy. And that's when I realized that my journey that I went through was in part designed to help other people.
Mm.
Right? Like, I didn't go through this just for myself. I did it so I can help people who are struggling with what I used to struggle with. So I left my full-time job about 3 years ago.
Mhm.
I started my business and then was working like for about 6 months still at my full-time job, and then in my business. And then I left the full-time, corporate world 3 years
Yeah.
ago. So I just, like I mentioned at the beginning, I work with really goal-oriented people who are ready to feel better. And unfortunately, with high functioning anxiety, like I said, it sort of makes people very successful. So
Mhm.
sometimes people, they don't realize this, it's subconscious, but they have this belief structure that they need the anxiety to be successful. Like, that's what makes them successful. And so there is this, belief that they have to overcome, that they can still be successful but not have the anxiety. And,
Mm.
like, I'm proof of that, right? And my clients are as well. It's still possible to be very successful and goal oriented. It's not the anxiety that is driving that. It's actually your subconscious beliefs. So you can believe that you can be happy and
Yeah.
feel great, and you can believe that you can be successful. Those things can all happen at one time.
Wow, that's great. So dealing with the anxiety during that time, and you hit on a little bit about with your family, like your relationship with your daughter. How are things now?
They're great. So when this was all happening, the years are going by. I think this was maybe 7 years ago. And so my daughters were in elementary school and they're in high school now. And
Wow.
so, I mean, they, have seen me really change over time. And I was just talking about this with my 15-year-old the other day about what it was like for her, and what it was like and what she was thinking or feeling when I was screaming at her.
Wow.
And she's very like emotionally intelligent, so she can remember a lot
That's
of this
great.
and talk about it in a way that probably not every 15-year-old could, but
Mhm.
like, she really has a perspective of remembering what I was like and seeing me change. And I will
Mm.
say that was one of the hardest parts, is when I would scream at my kids, I knew I was ruining my relationship with them. Like
Wow.
I hated what I was doing. And after I would do it, I would just promise myself like, oh my God, I'm never going to do that again. And sometimes I wouldn't for a couple weeks, but then sometimes I'd be doing it 2 days later. And so
Mm.
then I would feel so remorseful, and I would apologize. And this is just like any abusive relationship, right? It's like you can only apologize to somebody so many times. And then it's like, well, forget you. I don't believe you anymore. And it was getting to that point with my daughters,
Wow.
particularly the one I was just talking to you about, where she was like, yeah, you keep telling me you're sorry, but you keep doing it.
Mm.
Yeah. And she really remembers that. So now, our relationship is just really different, and the way I parent is very different. So it feels a lot better.
That's great. That's great. So, sorry. So what going back to your, I know I've went around all these different relationships, and building healthy relationships is always great as well. So when your clients come to you for certain coaching, what some of the things that they're struggling with that they need the coaching for?
Like we've said both a couple of times, have said this, the way that anxiety appears looks different for people. So some people are coming to me because they have a lot of anxiety around work. Like work just
Mm.
is ruining their lives,
Wow.
right? And then other people, it's that they are having parenting issues, right? So same sort of thing. Or maybe some people are struggling with health. So it's like you can just think of little pockets for themselves. Anxiety is like the underlying reason that they feel the way that they feel. But again, how it's showing up in their lives is very dependent on each person.
Wow. That's great, Miss Heather. So, what are some things that you can tell our viewers that I know we hit on it a few times anyway, but what are some things that you can tell our viewers about anxiety and if they have anxiety?
So we've talked, a bit about high functioning anxiety. If people have more generalized anxiety, it does tend to be veering into oftentimes feeling like people are going to have panic attacks. Either they do have them or they get to the point where they are about to, but they kind of stop. And so what's very common for people with anxiety is there's body symptoms that accompany the feelings of anxiety. So, chest constriction is the most common one, like people feeling like there's a weight pushing on their chest or not being able to breathe. Um, People go to the hospital all the time thinking that they're having a heart attack, and they're not, right? It's their anxiety
Wow.
that's causing that. That's extremely common. Other parts of the body that anxiety tends to show up is either like the gut, feeling nauseous, which you already mentioned at the beginning, or some people will describe it as like a lead ball kind of in their
Wow.
stomach, right? Or having digestive problems. And then there's a lot of tightness also that people have in their throats. That can be a symptom as well, just like a lot of constriction in the throat area. So most people are mistaking those for actual health issues, but it's actually the anxiety that's making
Wow.
their body talk, and their body is actually trying to help them, right? It's trying to be like, hey, you're in a really anxious state right now. You need to relax. But the irony is that most people then get very afraid of the body symptom, and that's what tips them over into a panic attack, because they're like, oh my God, something's so wrong with me. I'm about to have a heart attack, and their anxiety escalates from there, and then they tip over into having a panic attack.
Wow. Wow. And so if you guys feel anxiety or feel anxious about something, and that also leads me to my next question about dealing with stress. Did you ever feel like you were stressed under this time of having high function anxiety?
Yeah, and that's why I didn't know I had anxiety. I just thought I was stressed out. Like I
Wow.
said, like I knew the insomnia was just ridiculous, right? Of like, oh my God, my brain won't shut off, and feeling overwhelmed, feeling like I just had massive stress, like, oh my God, I have so much to do all the time, feeling like I said, if I was at home, I was worried about what I had to do at work. If I was at work, I had to, worrying about what I had to do at home. On the weekends, I was just worried about everything I needed to get done on the weekend, because then it was like, oh, I've got this errand to do. I need to clean this,
Wow.
Yeah. And so I felt very stressed out. And so a lot of people also confuse stress and
Yeah,
anxiety,
that's what I
right?
was into.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so like with stress and everything, how would you say that one should cope under stressful things? Like if they're feeling anxious and anxiety, like how would you say that they can decipher between the two? Because sometimes you are more stressed and you have anxiety, or
Yeah.
anxiety and stress.
Yeah, stress is normally very situational. So it's like you're going into a stressful situation and then you're stressed during the situation. Like let's say, oh, this makes something like you have to give a presentation at work, right? That is very stressful for a lot of people. But then when the presentation's over, then you come back down, you're like, whew, good, that's over now. And then you feel fine. Anxiety is like persistent and chronic. It doesn't go away. It's not situational.
Wow. So during this time, if you had the high function anxiety like yourself, you're making notes of things to do during that presentation, or knowing, or trying to see, is it going to go right? Is everything going to be okay? Or you're overly focused about doing it? What is my boss going to say, type of thing?
I think that's part of it. I think,
Mhm.
like with that example, let's say I'll just make something up. Let's say you're giving a presentation and it should take 4 hours to prepare. Let's make something up. Somebody
Mhm.
with high function anxiety would probably spend 3 times the amount of time that's necessary because they'll be checking it over and over and over to make
Wow.
sure it's perfect. Then they'll do the presentation. And then after the presentation is
Mhm.
over, then they'll look back at all the things that they did
Mm.
wrong that they should have
Wow.
done better, right? And be like, oh man, I really screwed that up. I can't believe I said that, or I wonder what that person was thinking, or oh, I could, and then it just boop, then there goes the overthinking again.
Wow. And that's even after everybody says you done a great job. You still beating yourself up. Like, no.
Yeah, it doesn't matter if somebody said you
Wow.
did a great job, you still would be like, "Well, yeah, but it wasn't perfect. I could have done this one. I could have done that part better." Like, yeah, it was 80% great and the other and then you only focus on the 20% that you think that, you could have done better. That's what you focus on, not the good parts.
Wow, Miss Heather. So going back to the coaching, and I'm wrapping up here. How long do your clients typically um, do a session with you, and is this something that's ongoing?
Yeah, I work with my clients and provide really high level support for 4 months.
Okay.
So we work together for a 4-month time period. I see them, obviously for multiple sessions during that time period. But then there's a lot of very specific things I have them do in between sessions because I want them to be just really focused on healing themselves during that time. And they really get amazing results. Most people who work with me have tried therapy or have tried pharmaceuticals like antidepressants or anti-anxiety medication, and those things haven't worked for them. So when they
Mm,
come to me, they're just really ready to try a different approach, and they don't want to spend, years
yeah.
doing it. It's like they're ready to commit to some change and feel better.
Wow. That's great. Well, it's been great talking with you, Miss Heather, and thank you for supporting and sharing about high function anxiety and what that kind of looks like for us, and painting that picture. And myself and my listeners going on that journey with you to understand anxiety. So we will be wrapping up shortly. But you do have a few comments here. We have Miss Danielle. Danielle was one of the former. She was last week's guest.
Oh,
Shout out to you, Danielle. And she's also um, umpteenth of mental health professionals and authors. So she said, "Hi, ladies. Thank
hi.
you, Danielle, for tuning in." And then we also have my best friend, Alexis. She put a heart.
Yeah,
Thank
I
you,
see I
Alexis,
see
for
that too.
tuning in. And then another listener said, "Oh, it's live and I'm still up. Thank you for being up and tuning in." And then Miss Brittany, shouts out to Brittany. Yes, she's also my fellow mental health professional. And she says, "Story of my life, great content." Thank you, Brittany. Yes, guys, like I say, we always promote self-care and self-health as well. And if you ever feel like something's going wrong, or even if somebody else, a lot of times family members, and I don't know if this was with you, Miss Heather, like you saying your daughters notice different things with you, or about how you were yelling at them or how things were coming off. So a lot of times you think that everything is going great, or you're like, okay, maybe I just need to calm down a little bit. But sometimes your family members notice different things that's going on with you, or that best friend can notice something that's out of place with you, and you can seek help for it as well.
Yeah, definitely.
So, yes. And then we have Miss Dee Dee here. Thank you, Dee Dee. Dee Dee is she was on previous episodes as well. She is Divas with Depression. So thank you for tuning in, Dee Dee. She said, very informational. Thank you.
And
So,
thanks for the
yes,
comments.
Miss Heather. Thank you for tuning in. And do you have any last encouraging remarks for our listeners tonight?
I just want everyone to know that everyone deserves to be happy, really. So if
Yeah.
you're struggling with something, there is a way out.
Yes. Yes, there is. And thank you so much. And thank you for tuning in to Talk is Cheap, None Cuts, None Censors. And thank you for your support, Miss Heather. Bye bye.
Thank you.
Yes, everyone. Miss Heather was here tonight. Shout out to Austin, Texas again. Very informational about high functioning anxiety. And if you're just dealing with any type of general anxiety, just we really promote self care and self health as well. And getting and seeking the help that you need. Like she said, sometimes the therapeutics is not working. Sometimes pharmaceuticals isn't working. So maybe you do need to seek out that life coach or that mindfulness coaching and get the help that you need in a shorter span of time. Or if it is something that's ongoing, just always, promote and love yourself and seek things to help you be successful and help you be happy. So, yes, thank you guys. And I also just want to shout out to my hashtag, Save a Life. Each life is valuable. Each life is something that's remarkable on this earth and just creating a legacy. And, thank you guys. So, thank you guys for tuning in. With just a little bit about next week. So, this was a very successful, happy Women's History Month. I had some phenomenal female guests on this past month, and it was great speaking to each and every one of them. And you'll see them in the future as well. Always building lifelong networking and connections. And shouts out to you guys for staying on and staying updated this season too. It has been great. But in the next couple of weeks, we're going to shift gears here and we're going to get prepared for season 3. Yes. So in a couple of weeks, 2 to 3 weeks, I'm going to take my break, go on my mini hiatus, and we will hit it hard at the end of next month for April, and we will start doing season 3. So, yes, and if you would like to be a guest on Talk is Cheap, just go to the email at the bottom, podcast of Dallas info at gmail.com. And thank you guys for tuning in. And yes, thank you for each and every one of my guests this season. Y'all are amazing. Your story has been heard. And thank you for tuning in to Talk is Cheap. Good night.